Hello, divergent friends. Welcome to Cognitive Dissonance, the channel where we try to sort through some of the confusion surrounding us. I'm happy to say I have a little bit of help today on that front. Let's see. What is up, Brooklyn Way, Paula Russo, Blue? Good to see you out there. All Over Adventures, Mr. Fox, Fearless, Cads Potter, Path, Leah Worth. Hello, hello. Before we get into it, guys, I do want to thank some donors from last show real quick on Rokfin. Special shout out and thank you to Christopher Hickman, Charles Needham, T Money Martin on Cash App. Thank you, Wonderlust Kate and T Roy Cooks, and on DLive, Chatternuts, Morning Flower, Corkscrew, PJ Zwierink, Tezos 2020, Morning Flower, Keish, Yvonne, Terry Lashley, Lady SCS, Karen Hare, J Bell, Julie 65, Successful Sarah, Low Country. You guys mean the world to me. Couldn't do it without you. So, today I am joined by Dr. Brooks Agnew. So, you are a physicist, an engineer. You have published over 10,000 articles and technical documents. You've written, what, like seven best-selling books. You've been on the History Channel, Discovery Coast to Coast. You recently joined the Foxhole fam. Shout out to the Foxhole fam. I could not be more pleased to have you here with me. Welcome to the show, Brooks.
Thank you so much. I'm loyal to the foil.
Stay loyal, friends. Stay loyal. That is all I can ask in the world. Man, how exciting. So, I don't even know where. I mean, I feel like we should just get right into the brass tacks. Like, we have some huge things going on at the moment. I mean,
Too many huge things.
so many happenings, right? So many happenings. And you apparently seem to be an expert on all of them. So I'm stoked about that. Uh, let me start with probably one of my biggest questions. Disclosure. So we've got this report, what, coming up, we're right on the money now, coming up in June. What what do you think? I mean, keep it 100 with me, Brooks. What do you think is going on? Is this our tech? Have we is it us? Are we putting on a show for China and Russia? Is this maybe stuff that we found that had extraterrestrial origin that we've back engineered? Is it some mixture of both? What do you think?
Well, that's a lot of questions, and
I
but
know,
I'll
right?
tell you that if we have found something, if something crash landed or was abandoned or somehow was discovered on the bottom of the sea, I guarantee you we reverse engineered it. Um, I you know I've seen UFOs. I've photographed them before. I know people who have. There is no doubt in any country, and most of the people in that country, that UFOs are real. There's no doubt about that at all. The question is, if we see them all the time and they happy go lucky walk away from our fastest jets and our best pilots, then the next binary question is it us or is it them? Now, I am more inclined to say it's them, but then now you have to ask the question, who's them? And
Right.
that's where the real big question goes. And it goes that way eschatologically and it goes that way scientifically, because you have to decide whether these are from another world or from another age of Earth.
Okay.
And they just don't want to deal with the surface dwellers that are on the planet right now because maybe they're outnumbered, maybe they don't have a good immune system, maybe they have their own gig going on at the bottom of the sea or inside the earth, and they don't want, because we breed like rabbits, we would be harsh in their gig big time. But if they're from another world, that means that me and a whole bunch of my friends, we need to rethink physics, because the way we have uh, crunched everything, interplanetary or interstellar, we're talking about star systems here, is really not practical. Not with a small ship. You'd have to make that trip with a planet or a moon or something. You couldn't go 40, 50, 70 years
A moon,
in
eh?
space. Yeah. If the moon is in fact a ship, and I can tell you from my own personal experience, that I am sure that there are either moons, asteroids, or worlds, because most planets in our galaxy are free floating planets, not revolving around any sun. They're ships. They're being used by occupants and they're moving through space. Why be in an aluminum can for generation after generation? Pretty soon you would not be able to survive. You wouldn't be able to support your own organs. You'd be a ball of mush out there in space, like a cephalopod or something. But if you had gravity and you could still move through space at 70, 80, 90, 100,000 miles an hour, then you're basically a galactic traveler on a world. All you have to do is provide enough energy, to keep yourself from freezing to death or from being exposed to massive amounts of whatever sun you're passing by, that radiation, which is pretty easy to do. Just live inside the darn thing. So if the moon was a ship and it was brought here and parked in a low orbit around Earth, a couple of days away from here, and then those inhabitants left that cold vacuum rock and came to this world, maybe they found it already occupied and they're not physically capable of competing with us. So they live here with us, cohabitating, and they just stay out of our reach. Because I will tell you this, I'm sure of this. UFOs are as present as they want to be. If they wanted to be more present, I doubt there's anything we could do about it.
I agree. And it's interesting that you mention transit in a planet. Wasn't it Avi Loeb that suggested that perhaps Oumuamua was actually something, a space rock that they had hollowed out and turned into something that they could use for interstellar or interplanetary travel?
Well, the one thing about Oumuamua that raised the most questions wasn't necessarily its shape or even its origin, although that was anomalous to be sure. It was its exit velocity.
Right. It sped
When
up,
it
didn't it?
Right, it
Hmm.
accelerated when it left, and it could have had a solar sail, but that would have made it definitely
Right.
extraterrestrial, intelligent. It didn't seem to have any means of propulsion, but neither did the Tic Tac that walked away from the F-18 Hornet off the coast of San Diego.
Right. Now you also mentioned that they could, you said from what era? You think it's possible.
Sure. I mean, how far does our history go back?
Right.
Maybe 50,000 years if we have semi, rub two sticks together to make fire man till now. But
Right.
but we have good evidence in geological records going back 5 million years. Maybe there were other zeniths of humanoids that lived on this world and were spanked out of existence by some cataclysm, but they had enough technology to save some of them,
Right.
and they just stayed out of off the surface long enough that they could no longer come back. So maybe they have to live in their own environment on the seafloor or inside the world.
I mean, that would make complete sense to me in any case. So what do you, I mean, what do you think we're gonna get from the government?
uh Table scraps.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really do, because well, they're not going to say, and here's how we achieve superluminal drive. No, they're not going to do that, because we're at conflict with one another. The global syndicate's been around here since the earth cooled, and they are all about owning all the souls on the planet. And we're at war with them right now. We are at war. So you don't want them to have the technology because they'll use it against us. They don't want us to have the technology because we'll use it against them. We're in competition, and we're not the same human race. We have two races competing for this world right now, and we're losing.
Thank you for saying that. Because it, so let me just grab that. What do we do now? What do we do to win? Because I'm a realist. I don't intentionally try to black pill people, so to speak. But I think it's very important that we see what's going on, address the issues, try to break it down. I mean, know your enemy, know what it is that we're looking at, and figure out what we're supposed to do now. Because I do believe in the power of human consciousness. I believe that's one of the reasons why they are determined to manipulate it with everything from genetic modification to transhumanism. Just something to, they're trying to ruin it. And
Well, yeah, I mean, transhumanism isn't all bad, so I don't want to lump it all in there. But you're absolutely right. For the last 4 years plus, we have been trying to break the hard candy off the surface of ignorance, so that people will, breathe fresh air, understand what's going on. When I
yes,
I wrote this book, I wrote the guts of it in 2011, Charm of Favor. Uh, it had a lot of stuff in it that was, I thought, powerful and going on in the world at the time. And of course, at the time, we were dealing with a different administration and its efforts to try to take this country apart. And I wrote it as a screenplay, and I put it in out there, and it didn't get funded, so I stuck it in a drawer. And then in 2015, Donald Trump started to come down the escalator, and I went, "Wait a minute, I wasn't that in the screenplay?" And I pulled it out and read it, and it just opened my eyes all over again.
right.
And this was in the early spring of 2016, and so I decided to turn it into a book. So by Christmas of 2017, it was the first volume of this series was done. And then I thought, well, I'll write the next one in a year or so. No, 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 no. It woke me up the next morning, and I kept right on going. So by the time Charm of Favor came out, it was December of 2018. So there was a lot of stuff happening right then. In fact, when this book was out, there was an intelligence out there inside an insider intelligence that was releasing information called Q drops. Now, I didn't know anything about it. I didn't go to the Chans. I didn't know anything about bread. I knew nothing. But it seemed like he was following this so well that on the spine, I put a gold Q.
Oh, look at that.
And this book is basically a story, a true story of the rise of the deep state, what we call the deep state then. In this book, I call it the global syndicate. And they're the same people that crucified Christ. They're the same people that brought on the 30 Years' War, I call it. When World War I started, it kind of took a pause because too many people died and they
Yeah.
needed to reload everything,
Hmm.
and they just continued it on to 1945. And it's the same people that crashed the country in 29, the same people that caused the Civil War, the same people that took the towers down, and they're the same people that are trying to rip our country apart right now. It's the same group. And you think, but Brooks, how could that be? That's 2,000 years old. Yes, it is. There's a supernatural component to this that most people don't understand and they don't want to believe. But it is all tied into this disclosure. It's got to come out. We have to tell everyone that we are not alone on this planet. We are living with very ancient beings that are trying to accomplish their goals by bribing our race.
Yes, I agree. I agree. Not that I don't think that there are extraterrestrials throughout the galaxy, but I happen to agree with you. I think the ones that are here have been here, that are probably, to some degree at least, from here, or at least have been here much longer than we have. You
Hey,
know,
we've looked 25,000 light years in every direction, and there ain't no Earth. This is the greatest show in the universe. All the best souls in the whole universe come here for a mortal life. This is it. I'm not saying it's the only one, but it's the only one for a long ways.
I'm with you. So you talk about souls, and as a matter of fact, I've heard you talk about consciousness in general as the prime force of the universe, right? Um, Quantum gravity created by consciousness, in fact. Is that not right?
Yeah, and that was kind of a controversy in 2007. Some of my colleagues, Sir Roger Penrose and John A. Smolin and others, were publishing, and they made the claim that consciousness was the result of quantum gravity. And then John A. Smolin came around and gave kind of a cryptic quote that's basically said that we're not dealing with a brain that evolved intelligence. In other words, we were intelligence before we ever became physical beings. And that's what I kind of played off of. In 2007, I wrote a book called Remembering the Future, the Physics of the Soul and Time Travel. And it talks about the eternality of the human soul, that we are sort of a bit, a soul address
We're a node.
of the main source.
Okay.
So when source woke up and said, I am, it started to divide itself into smaller and smaller pieces. And of course, it had to divide itself in two to begin with. And for a long time, I thought, well, it just divided like a cell, it just divided itself. But then I realized, no, 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 we're talking about multidimensional space here. It took the square root of itself. So when it took the square root of itself, there were two identical sources, smaller but identical. And
Okay.
one of them began to divide themselves more and more and more and more and more. And of course, it doesn't take many iterations, mathematically speaking, to get close to one, right?
Okay.
Square root of 16 is 4. Square root of 4 is 2. Square root of 2
Right.
is 1.11
Right.
or something. And the square root of that and the square root of that. So you get asymptotic and you approach 1. So you create trillions of soul addresses that are almost identical, 2 by 2 by 2 by 2 by 2 by 2. And as they age, they begin to grow in stature and they begin to grow in experience and power. And they return to source by completing themselves. And that's what we're in the process of doing. This mortal life is just a twinkle. It's just
Right.
a microsecond in our existence. We are eternal beings having a mortal experience. And from a mathematical point of view, I find that very exciting.
So when you say soul, do you mean the address, the node, the specific individual, the separate spark that's still part of the whole that makes the individual? Is that what you mean? When you say they're trying to control that?
Yeah, the value in the universe is not all the 3D matter. That's just
Right.
energy in a different state. What is really valuable and what the war in the universe is over us. It's over our, you could call it a spirit. I call it a soul to make the semantics easy. But the soul of a human, 2/3 of them anyway, have the ability to live forever, over and over and over and over again, as many times as they wish, grow, create life in their own image. This is not, or was not, afforded to the other third that lost the war before this world was built.
The fallen
So,
ones.
yeah, the fallen ones. So they, or their leader actually,
Hmm.
decided to cheat the system, which he is an expert at doing. He's also a timeless being. And so his seed came to this world through Eve. And now his DNA is on this world. And once his DNA is here, those beings that have enough of that DNA in their system can support one of those demons in human form. And they're here right now on this world.
Yeah, I can totally believe that. I can
Well, I
totally
mean, you
believe it.
ask the question, well, who's got the DNA?
Right.
Who is it? I mean, we're what, 10,000 generations since Adam and Eve? I don't know, 5,000 generations. How do I know who's got the DNA? Well, that's a great question. You know what you would need? You need a
Ancestry
company.
DNA, right?
That's right. You would need a
23 and
company.
Me.
That's right. And you can't force it because our laws wouldn't allow it. So
Right.
you sell it, and people voluntarily
Right.
send in their spit so they can analyze it. And then they discovered, oh, now we know where the DNA comes from. It comes from this country and this country and this tribe and this village and this. And now they're beginning to pull those villages together, concentrate that DNA again, bring the more powerful demons to this world. And we're watching them right now walk through our legal system
Man,
unharmed.
so much so. It's in and it's I rant about those companies constantly. Like that is one of my favorite things to flip out about. And like now you've mentioned this before, but I tend to flip out about genetic manipulation as if it's all bad, and it's not. It saves lives. It saved your life, in
Yeah.
fact, did it not? Okay. But there's another side to that. right? I mean, there's another side to that. Like, uh, with CRISPR, they can literally cut and edit the DNA however they need it to be. And now they've got an extension on that, do they not? Where they can, now they don't even need to cut and edit. They can turn on and off.
That's right. They can literally turn on or turn off proteins, which DNA genes are made of proteins. Okay, so they're complex macromolecules, and those sections of that we call junk DNA, unexpressed areas of the DNA, are manipulated by the environment. Well, what do you mean by the environment? Well, gravity, radiation, the amount of water you drink, the amount of sun you're exposed to, temperature, all kinds of things, plus the spirit, the soul inside the body also is part of that environment that can turn on and off those switches on the DNA. That's how people heal themselves.
True.
Do we know exactly how to do it? No, but CRISPR is getting better and better and better at it. Now, I don't know what it would be worth to be able to turn on the ability to grow a full head of hair anymore, but it'd be worth a lot of money, don't you think?
I would imagine.
Yeah, I don't know. They haven't obviously figured out how to do it or make people live forever, because we're watching our movie stars age years by the week now. It's unbelievable how old they are. Uh, but that being said, that is the key to curing every major disease, and there's a lot of good that could be done by it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But on the other hand, you
In the
know,
wrong hands.
right. And I think we've recently seen extensive evidence of this, have we not? I mean,
Well, I don't know. I mean, I haven't seen a super soldier. I've heard of super soldiers and rumors of them, but I've never met one. I was in the Air Force myself. I've seen, you know, pretty badass forces that have gone behind enemy lines and come back out again. These guys are good, but they're not superhuman.
well, what about viral manipulation? Is this not
Yeah, well, what went on in the Wuhan lab, which was splicing, this is kind of old technology, recombinant DNA. They were splicing the shoehorn bat flu, which was killing the bats in a cave 900 miles away from Wuhan, by the way. And they were trying to, through gain of function, make it to where not just bats could catch it, but people could catch it. And that's not that difficult to do, because people were catching it from the bats and they would die, but they couldn't transfer it to another
to a
human.
human directly? Right.
Right. So they had to gain the function a little bit so a human could get a human sick. And then they released it. And people are saying, why? Why did they release it? Well, think back what was going on. A few weeks before the Wuhan virus was released, Donald Trump had brought the Chinese to the table for the first time in history and got them to sign a trade agreement. He
Right.
was winning. He was winning on tariffs. He was winning on trade. He was winning on in countries where they were shipping their stuff, like shipping steel to Canada, saying it was Canadian made, and then shipping it to the United States as Canadian steel. Well, we know the difference. We can do metallurgy here. It's
Right.
Chinese steel. It's made from our old Chevy pickup trucks. We know
Right.
what it is. So that was winning, and everyone was winning. Everyone in the world was winning. And people were revolting in France and Venezuela and Germany and America. We were revolting against globalism. And so they released the Wuhan virus, made a phone call, and shut down 187 countries overnight and smashed the Trump economy. And that's the reason why that virus was released. So these are big, big players. And the stakes were enormous. They didn't know. They didn't know if this virus would kill 50 million or 5 billion. They didn't know. And they released it anyway.
I agree. I agree. And you said that people were revolting against globalism. I mean, they expected that. Klaus Schwab at the World Economic Forum has been talking about how as we try to make this reset, we're going to see a revolt against globalism, and that's why they're pushing even more pieces of this agenda with even more rapidity than they were when Trump took office. Like, they were planning on doing this either way.
And that might be the reason why disclosure is getting ready to happen.
I have a
Maybe they're gonna run that little movie. Hey, we're being invaded from outer
That's
space.
what
Let's unite.
people in the chat were saying that. Say, yeah, blue beam incoming, right? Um, I man, there's
I want one. I got something very special for them. I want one.
do let me know how that works out.
Yeah,
Do let me know how that works out.
nobody can stand up to a bullet, a metal piercing bullet going
There you go.
4,000 feet a second.
Right? I mean, are they? Matter of fact, I was having this conversation with I think Tyler Koala the other day from Journey to Truth. Are they? I mean, Blue Beam per se is holographic technology, right? Are they? They're not able to make these things interact on a physical level, are they?
Not that I know of. I mean, if you go back and look at all the cattle mutilations and abductions, and I've talked to all these people. I've met a lot of them at conferences that I go to. Can I discredit their story? No, I really can't. It's a personal thing for them. I don't have evidence to discredit it, just like they don't have evidence to say that it's true. So in science, we call that a direct observation. But a direct observation, although being a fact, is not validatable. It has to be backed up with evidence, a picture, a sample, another witness, some kind of repeatable and
Right.
reliable experiment that can be done to reproduce it. That has never been done, ever.
It, I saw something the other day that kind of made me think about that. I don't know if you had seen the article yet, but apparently the military has been able to produce talking plasma balls. It's a form of directed energy weapon, okay? That they can literally make to carry sound now. They can pass through glass. They're claiming that it cannot pass through other barriers, but they can get it through glass at the moment. And then there was a video, a guy I was it the drive? It was one of the periodicals that I read continuously, but they said they can get it to go through glass. He had a video, like a demonstration of this, where not only could it, burn if they directed it at you, but they could just make it kind of float there and carry sound. Don't continue, we will shoot, whatever. I mean, what do you think about could that not explain some of the things that we see? It's not like this is new. I mean, they're telling us now.
Yeah, I just don't know about being able to shape a plasma in the sky, but I know about HAARP. I've been
Yes, please do tell us about your experience with that.
in 1983, I was hired by a company to help them create a what's called ground probing radar in those days. Now we call it Earth tomography. But it was basically trying to find a frequency that could penetrate a certain distance into the ground and then uh, modulate based upon strata that it goes through, like limestone or basalt or areas that have water or natural gas or oil. And we found the frequency, but we found it kind of by accident because we really didn't know how to do the experiments. This is 1983, so we're dealing with pretty old equipment. Well, it was new then, but anyway, we were trying to survey this one wildcat area of oil and gas in Kentucky, which was called the Yellow Sands Formation outside of Bowling Green, Kentucky. And I had a broadcast unit and I had a receive unit. And what I was trying to do is catch this modulation between the antennas. So my mobile guy who was driving an ATV that had the broadcast unit on, I had the receive unit in the camper truck that we had. I sent him out, and we're both using 25-meter marine radios. Now these will communicate for a long way. You can communicate between cities with these radios. Anyway, he's within eyesight of me about 2,000 feet away, and I key down and ask him to move a little bit to the right. He doesn't acknowledge. So I waved my arms. Hey, answer the radio. And he's going, I can't hear anything. So I motioned for him to come back. So he drove back toward me and we checked the radios. They worked. He went back out, dead again. I said, okay, now I got to see what's going on. So I hooked a dB meter up to the signal strength He keyed down on his, and the signal just dropped right through the floor, about 70 dB. And I went, what the heck? Something is absorbing all the
Right.
radio energy. So I then brought an oscilloscope out to the field and hooked it up because I wanted to see what did the wave shape look like? What was left behind after this floor dropped out? So the floor of this noise, what we call constant wave, drops out, and these waves are left behind. So I said, I wonder what those waves are. So I designed a new antenna, which instead of being a whip was now a square wave antenna where I could focus it on a certain spot, you
Sure.
know, and then I put a protractor on it so I could move it and check that angle because, as you know, the tangent of this angle times the distance gives you the depth.
Okay.
It's a right triangle.
Right.
So we started to survey, and lo and behold, we found that formation and we mapped it. And then we drilled it and we hit it. So we took that technology and we found 55 oil wells in 9 states. It worked very well. And we were only using 50 watts. So I wrote my papers, published it. A piece of it went to Mars on one of the first rovers to look for water. It only had one antenna, not two, but it was a qualitative experiment, not quantitative. And then in 1997, I get a call from the congressman from Alaska. We're doing a documentary on a Navy facility here called HAARP. We want to know if you're interested in being on film. I said, well, describe it to me. What are they doing? And so she described it to me over the phone. I said, no. They can't, you can't do that because if you put that much power behind those frequencies, you could cause an earthquake. And that was what they had picked up on in one of my papers because we were in Roseburg, Oregon, and we had tripped off a quake when we turned on the equipment, the boom underneath us, and it was about a 5.5 quake. So I put it in my notes and I put it in my paper. Is it cause and effect or just a coincidence? I don't know. And I said that in my paper. But when I saw what they were doing with 1,000,000,000 watts instead of 50 watts, it scared the hell out of me.
I can imagine.
So then I met with the inventor, whose name was Bernard Eastlund, and he had filed 6 patents. 4 of them were quite nefarious. The other 2 were probably what I was using my technology for, looking for oil and gas in the ground. And if you look at the HAARP facilities that are around the planet, they've made huge, deep oil and gas discoveries using this technology. North Dakota, Texas, there are HAARP facilities in these areas, and they use them specifically for that purpose. But they are basically an ionospheric heater. And when you
Right.
heat up the ionosphere, it moves out into space, sometimes up to 60 kilometers. And when it moves, the stratosphere moves to fill in the space that was left when you push the ionosphere out. Well, when you move the stratosphere, you could pull the jet stream with it, which means you can move weather.
Right.
It's slow, it's not reliable, but you can move the jet stream. You can reroute it, which will reroute it all over the planet because it's, the atmospheric river. And you can bring rain or stop rain or bring cold air or withhold cold air using this technology. And you can also cause earthquakes if it's directed and the area has a propensity for an earthquake. In other words, there's one all wound up and ready to go, and you shine this beam at it for 6 or 8 hours, it will begin to build up resonance in the ground, and it will snap that rubber band, and the earthquake, the plate will shift, and the earthquake will happen. There's a telltale sign, though, when that happens, and that is a almost ultraviolet sky. When you turn HAARP on and you focus that much energy above a region, the sky turns lavender. And in Chile and in Fukushima and other areas, they reported lavender skies for up to 8 hours before the quakes. Those are HAARP signatures.
Isn't it crazy that we've seen some really wild weather in China recently and multiple earthquakes?
Well,
I'm convinced
let's
we're
go a little
having
bit bigger.
active weather wars at the moment anyway.
You remember the polar vortex in Texas, right? The one that killed
Yes.
all the
Right.
chickens and
Exactly. I tweeted
turned the
about
lights on.
that being some sort of craziness.
But remember, I told you when you move the jet stream, you change it all around the planet. for the first time in recorded history, that polar vortex hit Texas, hit Europe, and hit Asia
At the
all at
same
the
time.
same time. That's never happened before. That either was artificial or it is a precursor to an ice age. I don't know, but that has never happened before. And that's something science pays very close attention to.
I mean, we're not the only one with an array like HAARP.
No, there are 27 that operate around the country that have enough power. If they work in concert with each other,
Yeah,
they can be devastating.
that would be horrific, right? Um, yeah, I just, I think a lot, I don't, you said it, or it could be an ice age. I mean, we're seeing a lot of shifts. We're seeing a lot
Sure.
of shifts. I mean, today, I mean, not just on, with the sun, the energy from the sun, we're back into what, solar maximum, or we have solar flares incoming, like the energy incoming today. That's supposed to be what, like an M class solar storm, six of them, four or
Yeah,
six of them, or
that's
something.
nothing really terrible. When they get up to X class and
Yeah, that would be.
X9, the last time we had one was in 2004. Um, and we're in the solar minimum. We won't come out of it till probably maybe beginning 2025.
Okay.
Um, and then hopefully the sun wakes up, because if it doesn't, our atmosphere is getting thinner by the day.
Okay. Do you think? I mean, what kind of I assume this is something that has happened routinely, right? I mean, throughout the course of the
Well,
planetary
no,
timeline that
not
we.
not not there have been solar minimums, but they're not routine. They're rare. They don't happen maybe every few hundred years. A solar minimum like this. This is rare. It's not routine at all.
Huh.
And there are some that think that every 12,068 years, all the stars have a kind of synchronized hemorrhage they call a nova, and not a supernova where you need a really really big star to
Right.
do that, where all the electrons crash into the protons. But a nova is kind of like a stellar hiccup, like a stellar reset. And we do see the nodes staggered in space every 12,068 years. We can see them where there are no stars because they're blocked by the debris from these novas. And it's due, I don't know, something like 2065 or something like that. It's coming, but we don't know. We don't know. We don't have enough evidence. We haven't been around long enough to count one, but we just see evidence in space.
Are we seeing evidence of a potential pole shift? Somebody had wanted me to ask you that. D Yeah, somebody had
Well,
asked me to ask you that. What, I mean, what effects would we see preceding that? I know that we've gone from like dipole to quadrupole before, but only apparently in brief intervals, I guess.
we wrote about this, my co-author and I, in the four books called The Arc of Millions of Years. It's about 2,000 pages of nonfiction if you want to learn all about pole shifts. But uh, before we wrote the books, like the first one came out in November of 2004, we the world kind of believed that pole shifts happen over thousands of years or maybe hundreds of thousands of years. But as we began to put evidence together, we found that in the Nordic regions, there's evidence in what's called igneous rock. Igneous rock is rock that forms from molten material.
Right.
And there's evidence in this igneous rock, which has not moved since it was formed, of a different north magnetic pole. And it's quite broad. It's not like the little few degrees wobble that we're seeing now, 10 plus or minus 10 degrees. We're talking like 45-degree wobbles in the pole. And there is an effect called the Coriolis effect, which affects rotating bodies that have a sort of gyroscopic relationship. The Coriolis effect basically says that there's a force that acts at a 90-degree angle to the rotating field. And as the rotating field becomes less stable, it will begin to oscillate. That force will begin to vibrate back and forth. When you have two bodies, one inside the other, and the inside one's rotating quickly and the outside one's rotating slowly around it on the same axis, that Coriolis effect can get quite exaggerated. And what could happen is the core of this structure could actually flip over. And if it flips over, the crust of the earth is going to slow down, and then it's going to begin rotating in the other direction. It could take days or weeks for that shift and rechange to happen. But then the sun wouldn't be coming up in the east, it would be coming up in the west. And the magnetic alignment of the earth, Antarctica would be the North Pole and the
Right.
Arctic would be the South Pole. Now, that's going to change the navigation systems of virtually all the wildlife.
Right.
Birds, insects, whales, fish, everything's going to change. So that means that the food cycle of the earth is probably going to change for 40 or 50 years. It'll be cataclysmic, no doubt about it.
Speaking of the crust, the last time we spoke, we had talked about how they have evidence, or you had helped find evidence for a xenon iron crystal
Mm,
core, and that outside of the core there was space. There was some evidence for water, that the crust itself, I mean, that there was a great amount of space between the crust and the center, and that the core was spinning while the crust was still expanding. That you basically, that there is some space in the earth and you are trying to get there. Is that not right? Tell us about.
well, when you run experiments and then you gather data and the data comes in doesn't agree with your hypothesis, I'm sorry to say sometimes scientists will just throw it out because they want their hypothesis to stand.
Yeah, we see that all the time.
So uh, there was an experiment done in Japan where they were measuring the spectrographic output of the core of the Earth. And they were surprised to see how clean the frequency was in the iron spectrum. Now, when I say the iron spectrum, we have lots of states of iron. We have pure iron at a ground state, and then we have three different oxidation states, all the way to Fe2O3, which is rust.
Right.
And each one puts off a different frequency because of the amount of electrons that are in that compound. Uh, However, this particular frequency is what iron gives off when it's in crystalline form. And the only way that it could be giving off that frequency in that form is for it to be under very high pressure at very high temperature. And that didn't agree with the hypothesis, but it was worthy to try another experiment. So Carnegie Science decided to validate that experiment. And so they ran it themselves. And sure enough, they found this iron spike, and right next to it, another hump in the frequency. So it was like a double wave, one taller than the other. They didn't know what it was, but they had an idea because, well, let me get to the hard part of the experiment. They decided to duplicate what the core of the Earth might be made of by building a physical replica. So they produced a very large industrial diamond about this big, and then they cut it in two. And then they put half of it on a base and half of it on a hydraulic ram. And then in between those, they put a crucible that was sort of like two halves of an ice tray. And in that, they put pure iron in powder form. And then they put the top of the crucible, and then they crushed it between the diamonds on what's called a diamond anvil. And then, in order to duplicate the conditions that they thought existed in the center of the earth, they shot a laser through the diamond
Right.
so they could heat up the iron to the proper temperature. When they got it to the proper temperature, sure enough, it put out the same iron spike. Something was missing, though, and that was the second hump. So then they made a discovery that surprised them, but it also solved a problem. One of the problems is we have this law in chemistry. It's called the law of partial pressures. If we have a bottle of Gatorade, let's say, there's space between the top of the liquid and the bottom of the cap inside there.
Right.
So we could take a needle and we could go through the cap and we could sample that headspace. It's called headspace analysis. And we could shoot that into a gas chromatograph and we could look at all the compounds that are in that headspace. And guess what? They'll be in exactly the same proportions as the actual compounds in the liquid, in the Gatorade. So we
Right.
could actually analyze the Gatorade by analyzing the
The
headspace.
headspace.
So we have a certain amount of xenon in the ocean. It's in the liquid of the ocean, but
It's
98% of it's missing from the
not in
air.
the air.
Yeah,
Right.
it's not there. So they've been always wondering how is it that all this xenon stays in the water? Well, obviously it doesn't because we have this law. And sure enough, that's what the other hump was. The other hump was the xenon. So the next experiment they ran was to run the iron and run xenon gas into it, crush it, hit it with a laser, and there was the double hump. Now that's validation. So now we know what the core of the Earth is made of. Now, what does this do? Well, it changes all of our calculations because we know the diameter of the Earth. We know how long it takes to go around the sun, so we can calculate the weight of the Earth. We've always assumed that the weight of the Earth was about an average of 1 gram per cubic centimeter. That's just dirt, okay? It's just how we measure planets. But it turns out to be wrong because if the core of the Earth is somewhere around 14 to 15 grams per cubic centimeter, then that means the size of the Earth is all wrong. It's all wrong because the Earth should be a whole lot smaller, or
Would
we should be a whole lot further away from the sun.
so there's
It
got to be
means
space in there.
there's a space between the core of the Earth and the crust of the Earth.
And you are literally trying to fund an expedition to go to see if you can find, because the theory is that there's water in there, an ocean
Well,
in
that's
there.
not a theory. That is actually another piece of evidence that's been gathered through seismograms. Seismograms are measurements that are made during big earthquakes. And if you get a really heavy earthquake, it really jolts the earth, say, somewhere along the Pacific Rim. There are other seismometers, these are accelerometers that are placed around the planet. They wait for the earthquake waves to travel through the planet and hit those
Right.
stations. So they create these sort of CAT scans of the earth, but nobody ever analyzed them. So Washington University, under the direction of Dr. Y. Sessions, with their grad students working for pizza, probably, went through 600,000 of these seismograms, and they discovered another ocean underneath the Atlantic Ocean that's the size of the Arctic Sea. Now, that's a big body of water.
Right.
They could detect the waves crashing on the shore inside the crust, which means the crust itself has to be thick enough to have its own gravity, which it does. The core
Like
has its gravity, the crust has its
like
gravity.
900 miles thick, is that right?
900 miles.
Okay. So,
So, what we're going to see, because all the legends say that there is some kind of opening in this
right.
10,000 square mile area of the southeastern side of the Arctic Sea. Nobody's ever sailed it. There's no reason to sail it. It's not on the way to anywhere, and it's mostly covered with ice. And it's very rough seas to get there, like 10-story seas to get there. Nobody goes there by sea. It's been flown over a lot of times, but it's always covered in clouds. So what we want to do, and by the way, these are 1,400-meter deep seas. No, 4,400-meter deep seas. That's deep.
That's real deep.
That's as deep as it gets.
Right.
So in some places it's as little as about 14,000 feet, which is, you know, that's manageable, but you can't go there by a ship or a bathyscaphe or anything like that. So we've created some technology to drop in the water, go down, strike the bottom, take a core sample, inflate a bag, and float back to the surface. It takes hours for this to occur, but we think we can get samples off the bottom. What we're looking for is evidence of a vent between that ocean and our
And
ocean.
our ocean. Now, hasn't there been? Oh, Alara says she's going. By the way, just so you know, Brooks, she's on
Hey,
here now saying sign her up. She's
there
going
are
with
seats
you.
for 100 scientists, and then there we'll take 25 of our staff,
Ooh,
which will be mostly filmmakers, catalogers, people that can teach. And you got 100 people from around the world. Some don't even speak the same language. You got to have the ability to
right.
coordinate everything. And there's a tremendous amount of data that happens live. It happens real time. So we are going to stream live from the ship to a satellite. We're going to download from the satellite to two locations, one in Europe, one in the US, and then that will go out through pay-per-view. So everyone in the world can come with us for about $40.
Awesome.
The 25 that get to come on the ship may wish they never did so, but it's when you have live data, you have to run what we call a failure modes effects analysis on everything, because there's no running down to the Radio Shack to get
Right.
parts. You have to think of everything, so everything has to be failure mode analyzed, so that when it happens live, it's on set, it has to be solved right then, 24 hours a day, because the sun's not going to go down when we're up there. And hopefully we come back successful. If we don't find the opening, we don't find it. If all we see is whales and ice, it's going to be successful anyway, because it's never been explored before. This new Earth, new place. We've never been there before.
Is there not some evidence of m- mutation there that led you to believe in the first place that there was in fact event there?
What an excellent question. In 2008, it was after a very anomalous Arctic condition. There was a prevailing wind that was high speed and it was warm, and it cleaved off what we call calving. It calved off a big piece of Arctic ice. It opened the Northwest Passage for the first time in a long, long time. And that fall, the Malaysian array scan was due to happen. The oceanographic organizations of the world, the NOAA and UMITSAT and other support organizations, send scientists to Malaysia to sample rays like stingrays and manta rays, because they're like the tree frogs of the sea. If there's any kind of weather change or pollution or anything like that, tree frogs, react. They grow 6 arms or
Right.
2 heads, or anyway, rays do the same thing. And they expected to find, mutations of rays. Normally they find 20, 25 new species of rays every time they do this. This time, however, they found 1,500 new species of rays, not even close to anything we've ever
Right.
seen
There
before.
had to be something going on.
It's more than a coincidence. It's a
Right.
piece of data. We can't conclude anything from it because we can't duplicate it, but we have netted things that have been dead or supposedly dead for a long, long time in our ocean, but they're perfectly well and alive in another ocean inside the planet.
Right. I can see that. Um, I want to thank Mr. Fox, Stony Joe, Detox with Tessa, Nick Houston, Debbie Roush, Callie M, and Terry Lashley for your donations on DLive. Much love to you. Thank you. Um, so so say you find this vent, right? Say you get up there, you get your data, you get all the analysis you need, you find the vent. Then what? Then what's next?
That's a good question.
Journey to the center of the earth? Do we get to do that now? Is that
I don't know. It's pretty hard to get through 14,000 feet of water.
I would imagine, right?
Uh, the Obviously, if it's successful and 20 million people watch it online, which could happen, then we're going to raise enough money to be able to do it again. And if we don't get all the data the first time, we'll do it again, or do it a second time, a third time. We love to validate. We love to get the same
Yeah, you want to be able to
result.
repeat your results, right?
But the first time, it's going to change everything. It's going to change the way we think about planetary core geology. I guarantee you there'll be a double handful of PhDs and maybe even a Nobel Prize come off that ship. Uh, Grad students who have been armchair Arctic plate tectonic experts are going to get to witness it firsthand. So this is a big opportunity for these 100 scientists. It's a huge opportunity for planet Earth, and of course, it's a hell of a challenge. It's the biggest project I've ever worked on in my life. I've been on it now 13 years. I've put tons of money into it, and now we're getting close. We have a good website. We have decent exposure. We're trying to raise the money to get to the GoFundMe stage, which is about 60 grand. We're almost there. Once we get that money together, we'll run the GoFundMe campaign, try to reach out to the 40 million fans we have out there, see if we can raise the downstroke on the boat, which is about $1.5 million. Once that's made, then we have until March of 2022 to put the rest of the money, which is another $1.5 million, which we think we can do. We'll have enough momentum then. We'll
Right.
have the email addresses of all these fans and we can keep going back to them and they'll be putting in monthly amounts of money. It's not a whole lot, but when you multiply it by 1 million people or 5 million people, it makes the work lighter on everybody. I look at it this way, NPR. We all love NPR, don't we?
It's great.
Uh, they take money from my paycheck and from your paycheck,
Right.
and they give it to NPR. Now, I don't know if you've never seen NPR's building, have you?
No, but I've heard their
You would
lovely
die.
programming.
You would die to get there. It's the most amazing architecture for a radio building. You're going, man, this is uptown, and they're taking money from your check every single week and giving it to NPR to fill us full of propaganda. All we ask people is why don't you volunteer to tax yourself? Send $2 a month to the cause. And if 100,000 of you do it, we're going to
Right.
get this project done and the world will benefit from it. And believe me, I'm not making any money off this. Every donation that comes in on my radio program goes into that bank account. That's the only way that we've reached as much money as we have, other than the $25,000 I seeded it with.
That is awesome. So is there no way for you to get, I mean, is there not enough data that you can get some sort of grant funding or apply? Like crowdfunding is great. People love to support things they care about and they love to do it without being forced to do it. I think it's a great way. Is there not also, can you get, I don't know, grants or investors, or is there some other way to help you get to where you need to be with that?
Well, the answer is yes to all that. We did go to the National Science Foundation. Of course, the restrictions were we couldn't use a Russian
Oh, of
icebreaker to
course.
do it,
Right.
and all the data would belong to them. We
Ah,
went to Richard
right.
Branson and we almost signed the deal, except he said, now you realize once you sign this, this is my project.
Uh-huh.
And we said, we want to do it, but not that bad. Then we went to Discovery Channel, History Channel, Nat Geo Channel. We spoke with them. That they're not in this game. All they do is sell airtime. They're not investors. So I have spoken to tens of millions of people over the last 13 years on radio, on television, many times on TV, many times in person around the world, including Japan. Lots of people are interested in this project, but we have never run into an investor that can spare 3 million bucks. And I honestly believe every time this project wakes me up in the middle of the night thinking about it, this is the people's project.
Right.
It belongs to the earth.
Amen to that. Amen to that. Yeah, don't, yeah, you definitely don't want to have somebody else controlling, then they have every, like with Virgin Galactic, they have every right to do whatever they want to it. That's, yeah, that doesn't end well.
Like Twitter, like Facebook. You think if
Man,
Facebook made a big discovery that they would share it with the world? No. In fact, we're the ones that make up Facebook. Us, we're the people, right? But do you think we can reach our fans on Facebook? Sure. If you want to spend $10,000 a day in advertising, no, I'd rather not.
right. I mean, they let people, they decide who they're like Twitter especially decides who they're going to let talk now. Like,
Right.
God forbid. Man, what a mess.
It is.
What a mess.
So I just think we should go around them and do it ourselves.
So, I I have more questions about this. So you don't this would be an extreme environment inside the earth. You're not expecting to find creatures. I mean, well, not. Let me take that back. Civilizations. Like there could be, because there are extremophile creatures that can live in the most heinous of places, right? You're not expecting to find like civilizations there, uh, but there
I'm
could.
not expecting to know, but again, you have to be prepared for everything.
Man, right?
There's no, well, I didn't know we were going to see these. We didn't bring any equipment to film this. So
Right.
yeah, we're going to be filming in ultraviolet, or not ultraviolet. We're going to be filming in infrared and visible.
Oh,
So yeah, we're going to be prepared for it. When we get together as a board, uh, there, I'm not saying there's copious amounts of scotch, but there are lots of thoughts that go on about this.
I'm
What if?
sure.
What if? What if? You think, well, what if UFOs really are real? What if we're out there 500 miles from the nearest human? We're the only consciousness signal in a sea of light because there's no darkness. What if they come out to see us? Well, if they do, we'll get it on film, and everybody that's watching will see it live.
Man, you go poking around there, you might catch them live. You might catch them live.
Yeah,
Uh,
well, it's a 75,000 horsepower, 475 foot long ship, so it's able to handle itself.
I can imagine. I can imagine. Man, well, Brooks, you know, I don't want to keep you all night. I wanted to chat with you a bit. I mean, this has been captivating for me. Don't be surprised if you start getting like random emails in your inbox from me asking questions about
I like it.
things
I
I'd
love
love to
questions.
have some insight on. Can you tell people where to find you, what you have coming up, how to help with your
Yeah,
project?
sure. The easiest way is you can go to brooksagnew.com. That's my personal website. Everything is linked there. My radio program, uh, what we call the North Pole Inner Earth Expedition. It's in the menu as the Hollow Earth Expedition. You can join it. You can sign up. The newsletter is free. That means it doesn't cost anything. And you can contribute. You can write to us. You can donate to us. All my books are for sale there. And by the way, if you buy any of my 11 books that are in print, they're formidable. This one's almost 500 pages thick. I will give you the audio version of this book for free. So if you're not a great reader, don't worry about it. I read it for you. You can, you can, you can listen to this book while you're driving.
Awesome. Yeah, all your links, guys, all his links are in the description below. I made sure that I did that. So they're all down there. Please go check it out. And you've been on the radio and on the web for like 17 years. I mean, your show is phenomenal to listen to. Like I said, guys, he's on Foxhole now. Go check him out. There you have it. He's the man, the myth, the legend. Brooks, Agnew, guys. Also be sure to check out Rise Attire, who was on with Alara Wednesday 9:30 on her channel. Um, and then on Thursday, Tyler Koala from Journey to Truth is going to be speaking with Geraldine Orozco at 8 p.m. talking about the human hybrid program. Let me empty this chest on DLive.
By the way, you talk about events. She's really cool. And we're going to be speaking at an event at Mount Shasta in August.
Geraldine
And
Orozco?
yes, and you can get to that
Oh,
from my website as well. It's the Mount Shasta event. It's, I think, the 26th through the 29th of August. And it's going to be awesome. The best speakers in the world, myself,
sweet.
Laura Eisenhower, Brad Olson, Geraldine's going to be
Oh,
there. Suzanne Ross is going to be there. I mean, tremendous personalities.
sounds like it. That sounds like a great conference to catch. Man, there's so much going on this summer. I know Alara is going to be speaking out at in Sedona with some people at 11 Light. 11 Light, I'll have to get the info on that.
Yeah,
There's a lot of stuff
that's a
going on
very
this
cool
summer,
place. That
right?
conference center
Oh,
in Sedona, it's beautiful.
right. Sedona was awesome. There you guys go. There's your rewards on DLive. Look at that. Debbie Roush, Leyland, Detox with Tessa, Russo, Thumper Rose. Also, guys, if you haven't gone over to Rokfin, made the free account, you need to do that. There are a ton of good content creators over there. And if you subscribe through my channel, you get access to all the premium content on the platform. Alara's over there. They've got the Android app in the Play Store now too, which is awesome. If you want to support this channel, you can donate directly at loyal2thefoil.com or with Cash App, which is obviously also in the description below. And if you drink coffee or want some special spice, in your life for your meats. Maybe you just want the manliest beard ever. You can go to beardvet.com and use promo code SFN at checkout for 10% off. You're supporting this channel, supporting veterans. It's a win-win.
I'm going to
Um,
buy the coffee just because of your
oh,
awesome commercial.
with the beards, we we had so much fun with that. The coffee's really good. Like no cap. It's good coffee. But the beers were super freaking fun. That was funny. We had so much fun with that. Um, well, I will meet you guys back here 8 p.m. on Friday for conspiracy theory trivia with my dude Tyler Koala. So until then, stay loyal, right? Good night, guys.